James Melendez, James, the wine guy, here to talk about the wines of the world today. And also, we live in the best of wine times. The best of wine times is severalfold. One is that consumers have demanded it, producers have understood, and I think it's a band of artisan winemakers who've said they've always understood that, and some of their expressions are coming through in very personal ways today, which I think is a great thing. We also live in great times because I think producers and regions, wine regions, have understood you have to really look at your production, and you have to look at terms of maybe self-regulation. How do you create the best wine possible? And it's a great effort is the answer. And so when you looked at U.S. wine labels, you would see that it would say Burgundy or Bordeaux. But it was neither, and it was non-meaningful. And I think producers have really understood that consumers want to know, oh, it's a Cabernet Franc, it's a Cabernet Sauvignon, it's a Chardonnay, it's a Pinot Noir. People care. And because it's fitting with their flavor profile, what they are needing and wanting. Also, you would have seen in the 1950s and early 60s on U.S. wine labels, no vintage. And that's an amazing story into itself, which is, that's about quality as well. I know there are some multi-vintage productions that are out there, that's fine, but usually you can find, you'll turn it around on the back panel, you'll see that there's a year associated. And what I am getting at here is that when you see the year, you understand when it was produced. And with that, you can know that, oh, this wine might be past its prime, or maybe it's in its prime optimum tasting period. And that is another story, which is vintage goes a long way. While you may not need that on beer, yes, there is vintage beer, I get that too, but you don't need it on spirits either. And for a variety of reasons. One, be simple, you don't need it. And secondly, there's no variation between years, batches, and so forth. When it comes to wine, it's different. You definitely want to taste what a 2001 Cabernet Sauvignon is compared to the same producer's 2011. And I think those are some really great features of understanding how year is important in terms of wine production. Here we go with these wines. Just a little quick descriptor. I'm going to do a video on each of these. I've produced a few already. So this is called Morlanda. This is a Priorat wine from Spain. And interesting story here is that you would not have found a Priorat in most stores a decade ago to 2 decades ago. It would have been impossible. You would have found Spanish wine, but not this region. So here you have Tamata, and Tamata is from Hawke's Bay in New Zealand, and it's Gamay Noir. So while you've had maybe Pinot Noir available, or maybe Chardonnay, it would be harder to find the Gamay Noir. So in Hawke's Bay, I would have struggled to have found a wine from this region. It's with great ease that I find that today. So this is De Angelis, a Malbec from Argentina, Mendoza, of course. Mendoza is one of these regions extremely well known for wine production, for Malbec in particular. And it's also a wine region that has really learned to understand the quality scale and meet those demands of customers' requirements. Here we have Cabernet Franc, Tinhorn Creek, Okanagan Valley. Great story here is that this region understood that in order to compete on the world stage and to have wines recognized, they had to pull out the hybrid grapes, which were pretty plentiful in the mid-70s, or actually before the mid-70s and previous to that. And so you have Cabernet Franc from this producer here. It's an excellent bottle. I've already done a video and produced that. Fantastic things learned, which is, so in the late 80s, you have Vitis vinifera planted. So you have to wait, 4 to 5 years before you can really produce wines from that. So when you think about it, it's a wine region that has, it's relatively young. And yes, Vitis vinifera had existed prior to the late 80s, and but wasn't the mainstay of production. So when you think of Canada, it's come a long way. Okanagan Valley, and great strides have been made to increase quality, and it's definitely a world-class wine region. You have this here. This is the Beach House, and this is from South Africa. And South Africa, another story. So this is Sauvignon Blanc Semillon. And so another story here was you would have found a Chenin Blanc, and you might have found a Pinotage 10, 15 years ago, if you were lucky. And you'd find 1 or 2 SKUs, period, 2 bottlings, and you would find no other producers. Now you have something like a Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. Very cool. And you find Shiraz. And so, again, the world stage is here. And I get excited by tasting a South African wine or Canadian wine or wine from Chile or New Zealand, thinking, it made the journey here. I can taste it. This is wonderful. So, more reviews, jamesthewineguy.com. Subscribe to my videos on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Vimeo, Google+, Pinterest. Salut.